Many African nations have traditionally supported Russia, but they really need to wake up and smell the coffee and see that it is the people in some of the poorest and developing countries who are going to be affected by this the most. The situation in the Black Sea is very concerning. It remains to be seen whether we will have some sort of a coalition of the willing, which is what I would like to see from Western nations to escort Ukrainian vessels out. But we know that over a week ago, Putin said that any ships approaching Ukraine would be effectively considered as enemy combatants and could be fired on. Africa is a absolutely critical diplomatic battleground for Ukraine, and I know from experience of doing interviews with several African countries that the bias tends to be very much on the Russian side, and tends to be very much there's a propensity that they are willing to swallow the most ridiculous of Russian lies and disinformation that we hear. Many African nations have traditionally supported Russia, and some of that support comes out of their own independence struggles during Soviet times when the Soviet Union was a natural ally to them. But they really need to wake up and smell the coffee and see that Putin is weaponizing food, and it is the people in some of the poorest and developing countries, many of them in Africa, who are going to be affected by this the most. Yes, in the West, we're going to see food prices go up, but in Africa, people are going to starve. And of course, the other reason that he wants to do this is so he can sell more of his own grain to Africa, and I believe there has been a bumper harvest in Russia over the last 12 months. The EU ban on military equipment to Belarus absolutely makes sense, but I got to say, 17 months into this further invasion, it's long overdue, and one has to ask the question why it's only happening now. Belarus is Putin's closest ally in this genocidal war, but I suppose, like everything, better late than never. Belarus has an army, and there has been speculation about Belarus joining the war on Russia's side from the very start. But what I also understand about Belarus, and I know a few Belarusian dissidents and activists who live in the UK, and I would say that Belarus has a far healthier dissident and pro-democracy movement than has Russia. And to my mind, there's always been a huge question as to whether Lukashenko could actually convince his own people and his army in particular to support that. And I think that is probably why, for all the talk and the fear about Belarus coming in on Russia's side, almost from the very beginning, let's say back in February 2022, it hasn't happened yet. The counteroffensive is clearly going very slowly. And it's going very slowly for a number of reasons. One, the Ukrainians are attacking positions which the Russians have had months and months to build very strong defenses in, but also lay very dense and very broad or deep minefields. And it's been made very clear to me, and I was speaking to senior military guys over the weekend, it's been made very clear to me that the Ukrainians are deliberately advancing very slowly because they want to save the lives of their own people. So the counteroffensive is going slowly because of the deep minefields and the nature of defenses they're attacking. It's going very slowly because the Ukrainians wish to preserve the lives of their own people, although they still will be losing, I am afraid to say, significant numbers. But the third reason, and this is something I really want to talk about today, that the counteroffensive is going slowly, is that we still are providing the heavy weapons that they need too slowly. I was speaking again to people over the weekend. Many of the tanks that have been committed, the modern battle tanks, the Leopards in particular, that have been committed to Ukraine are still not in place. They have been crying out for over a year for more long-range artillery and something called ATACMS in particular, which is an American multiple launch rocket system with a range of 300 kilometers. And this is important because this allows the Ukrainians to strike Russian positions and elements of the logistics chain, including ammunition dumps and command and control headquarters far behind the front line. The Ukrainians are still not getting ATACMS, and the latest rather disappointing news that I heard this morning, speaking to another senior Ukrainian friend, was although Biden has relented on the F-16s and agreed that the Ukrainians can be provided with F-16s, the training program for the F-16 still has not been agreed and commenced. So again, it's going to be many, many months before the Ukrainian Air Force has the F-16s in place. And this is important because it is accepted by the military men that generally, to have success in a combined arms counteroffensive, one needs parity, if not air supremacy.